Alright, I'm gonna start here. If the music's too loud, if you can't hear me or something, feel free to say so. I'm probably not going to talk non-stop today. Just want to look at some charts I haven't looked at in a while and see how the state of the market is. Some of this is DeFi stuff. There are a lot of them that I don't check in on very much, like ZRX, KNC, that are kind of big players in DeFi, but I don't necessarily always keep track of them. So yeah, we're not going to look at like ADA and that sort of thing today. I'm going to check out some other things just as they come into my brain. We'll start with AXS. And this one's already charted. I did this earlier today and posted, so the weekly, there's really nothing to see. I mean, weekly or just price exploration, you could mark a bottom for sure, but marking some kind of interim level on the weekly doesn't make sense. So as far as the daily, you just have this range. And looking at the history, to produce this chart earlier, I had to delete my old markings, which were all just here. And it's so crazy to come back to this just several months later, not having looked at the chart and see it absolutely blasting off from the last time I charted it, like 5,000, 6,000%. So that's definitely something that I wish I had kept track of, because like I said, my last markings were down here, and checking it today for the first time in months. Yeah, it would have been great to like see this breakout and retest and peeling up and have gotten in around here, but it's too many things to track and I lost track of this one. So AXS, absolute beast. Looks like it's probably a nice little accumulation zone. I don't really see this going away soon. You know, maybe in the future something replaces it or interest is lost, but for now, it just straight shot up, very minor correction, and then you had sort of a little bit of a bleed out, but you could just call this an accumulation zone into another accumulation zone. Very unlikely that this becomes a distribution, especially if we stay in a bull market. This probably just breaks up at some point. Right now, people are distracted because Bitcoin's going up, Ethereum's going up, and so their interest is elsewhere. A lot of people just talking about NFTs, so random altcoins not getting a lot of love right now, but once people kind of get over the ADHD and start looking at altcoins a little bit more again, chances are this one's going to break up out of this. It's probably a decent place to take a risk reward. Not sure what's the bottom to this, bottom of this range, 7%, top 5.5. So maybe you want to hold out for, see if there is a couple red days or something like that. You could put an interim level about here, catching the top of the left side, the bottom of the right side, but I mean, this could pop off whenever it wants to. This is something I wouldn't suggest trying to catch the bottom of this sort of range when you have this much bullish action. You're probably better off just setting aside an amount that you're willing to buy every day and buying that amount every day, unless the range really breaks down, unless you, for example, were to fall back into this zone. But just averaging in maybe even a couple times a day might be good on something that's consolidating, but historically doesn't consolidate very long. So AXS, it looks good until it doesn't. I mean, there's no reason to believe that this is going to just turn around out of nowhere. Looks nice. I don't think we're going to look at market cap stuff today. There are some coins I want to make time for that I haven't looked at in a while. Most of them are DeFi. AAVE or AV, or however you want to pronounce it, I haven't looked at in a long time. So these are old marks. These are probably not really playing out so much. These are old weekly marks. I think I would move this up a little bit, maybe like so. The bottom is fine, the top is still fine. Looks like we could add a new one, probably around here. It would make sense to add a new... What color was I using? I don't know what this is. But yeah, it looks like we have consolidation happening right here. And you are toward the bottom of this range, few percent down and several percent up. So not a bad risk reward. Good day, mate. So I was reading like crazy things about Australia right now. Like people can be locked in their apartment complexes and quarantined off like in China when the virus was new. It's pretty scary stuff. Because you could be locked into your apartment with a bunch of giant spiders. Yeah, that's only a 2-touch bottom side. So the thing I don't like about this, you had a potential for a double bottom, but instead of breaking up and completing the double bottom formation, it just fell back into the range from that decision point. And so instead, what you get is the potential for a double top that could break down. So that looks kind of ugly, but yeah, this is not seeing the massive uptrend that other things have seen as far as DeFi goes. Have to collect the right tool there. So for this, I think I would probably just watch the weekly. I don't think there's too much reason to watch the daily because you're in this macro range, but within that macro range, you're also just in the middle, like dead in the middle. So very much a decision point. I don't like to trade decision points. I would rather wait until it breaks one way or the other. The daily, I don't think it's even worth really looking for like support resistance levels on the daily. I think all that really matters here is going to be the weekly. You could mark a daily level like around here if you want to, but I don't think those are going to really matter as much. High time frame is going to trump here. It's very obvious the range that you're working with, and it's tried to break both ways. You had a couple trying to break the top, a couple on the bottom, a couple back on the top. Now we're heading kind of toward the bottom, but sell side looks a little weaker. There's not a lot of high wicks on the top side, but this support is becoming more ironclad, so that's just something I would watch. I don't have any desire to jump into this right now. Doesn't look great. Doesn't look bad, just doesn't look great. I mean, you have stuff that's doing, you know, this, so, and then it consolidates, you know, consolidates, breaks up, consolidates again at the top. So if you can jump in something like that, even though it's very high, why would you want to jump in something that's on the weekly, just sort of ranging and making a decision? Just let it make the decision. No reason to rush. Next, what's next? We'll look at Sol. Sol is probably already charted, so this should be very easy and quick. Hello, Haas. Thank you for the follow. So Sol on the weekly needs a little bit of an update. These might be daily levels. Let me zoom in and see if these are just daily levels. Yes, this is a daily level. This sort of area might not matter too much anymore. It looks like we're getting sort of a new support area around here. You have wick bottom here. I think my music is probably too loud. I'm not sure. Turn it down just a little bit for you. And so you have wick bottom, two bottoms here, and close enough on the top of this. I would say that 147, 400-ish, probably your new daily support. Of course, we aren't going to have anything on the weekly that we can look at. This does kind of line up with where the weekly ended last week, but it's price exploration. You can't be too certain about this sort of thing. Top side, all you can really do, I would say maybe something like this will play out. You've got a couple wicks here, kind of chopping off a couple bodies, so you can put it here just because it's prettier if you want, and you're catching the wick for today. But something like this looks like our daily range for the time being. Again, impossible to tell in price exploration what's going to play out, but this is what we have to work with for the moment. 162,400 on the top, 147,400 on the bottom. And I think you could probably just delete all these old levels. They really are unlikely to come into play again at this point unless we enter some kind of macro bear market or complacency shoulder. You can look towards something like the top of this, which gets these wicks and of course the wick and the candle bodies on the right side as being a sort of evacuation point if this does break down. But even if we were to break down from here out of this range and hover around a little bit, that would just be time for this EMA to kind of level out, and that wouldn't be so bad. We could come down on the RSI and like level out toward mid as we click the EMA and just continue upward, not unlike what you saw with AXS, doing the same thing around this area where you made a big impulse up and you kind of had a support zone, and then you broke down a little bit toward your EMA, toward the middle of the RSI, and then you boomed up again. And seeing something like that from Sol, where you have this big boom up, a little range, and breaking down a bit, and then booming up again while your EMA resets and your RSI resets, wouldn't be the worst thing. Not too bad, not scared about that at all. I think it looks good overall. I'm very much not the kind of trader to enter into a huge straight up breakout. I don't like to trade those things, but it seems that Sol is the real deal. I mean, I was looking at Sol on this breakdown, having just gone parabolic and completely retraced, and I thought, you know, this coin is dead. And then it started to go straight up, and I thought, people are crazy for buying this. Look at what happened. Of course, this is absolutely dead. Why would anyone buy this? And here we are. So, you know, just you got to play the trends. You can't be stubborn like I am sometimes, or you will just miss out. So, big mistake by me there, not playing the levels and listening to the chart. I was being biased by past price action, and don't want to do that in this case. If it wants to go up and consolidate, I think that would be a good sign. It probably won't stay here too long if we're in a real bull market. So next, I would like to take a look at DOT, which is probably also already charted. So maybe just a small update to whatever levels we need to change here. Yeah, it looks like have some weekly levels already in place. Do we need to change these? Maybe we need to update these a little bit. Looks like this area might be more accurate with the recent price action. Yeah, something like this probably makes more sense to block this off as like a weekly zone. So this is what we're up against right now, having gone basically straight up, pretty much parabolically straight up for DOT on the weekly. So that looks good. And what we want to know now, actually this is like right in line with the tops over here too. So you can put the line in a couple different places. As I always say, it doesn't matter exactly where it is. These are kind of zones. Don't consider lines to be like exact price points. Lines are all, you know, guesstimates, so it doesn't matter too much. If you wanted to draw your line here to capture the tops of these, that's fine too. I'm just putting mine favoring more recent price action around here. So we've reclaimed the EMA on the weekly, which is great, and we're moving into the top half of the RSI, which is a confluence of events I like to see. As you might know, I really love these sort of rounding out bottom patterns while we take RSI and EMA at the same time. That's like the trinity of things that I love to see for me to be bullish on something. On the daily, yeah, we have these old levels down here we could probably get rid of at this point. I don't think those are going to come into play anytime soon if the bull market is to continue, and if we do revisit those lower levels, we'll just add them on later. It's all right. So if we want to update for daily, I think probably we're going to have something, let's see, around here. Doesn't have to be perfect, but some level like this, about the, actually we can just make this a nice even 55 for the obsessive compulsion in all of us. So what we're getting with this is sort of the tops of these wicks and the bottom of these. Seems like a good level on the daily. And if you look to the side, it will of course catch sort of the bottom of this action too. Now the purple is the weekly level, which is why it's not lining up with things on the daily. And what we see is that we're kind of stalling out at this weekly level. That should be expected. Whenever you get to a high time frame, you generally expect to have some kind of resistance at those levels, and this is no different. So that's not anything to stress out about too much. What I think you would be more likely to stress out about is if you reject off of this level just like completely. If you start to head toward a previous weekly level, that's where you might want to be a little bit worried. We are a bit overbought and we are quite a bit from this EMA, so we might see some kind of correction. If we did see that correction, I would be looking for this kind of area to hold, to be really bullish on the daily. But doing something like this, not very scary. Wouldn't mind that at all. That would allow the EMA to kind of come up and probably give us some kind of wick touch or something like that, and give us room for the RSI to kind of normalize down a bit. So that would look very nice. I would not want to enter along under the weekly resistance. I would rather wait until we come up above it. Not as a wick, but as sort of like a real body close above is what I would be looking for if I wanted to long. If you're bullish long term, of course, because of this nice cup we've got going on here, then, you know, buying spot is probably the way to go. That would, of course, you get less profit, but it minimizes your risk as well. So buying spot would probably be the way to go if you want to have some skin in the game here with DOT. Otherwise, I would be looking for basically this to happen, but in the other direction on this side. So instead of a few closes above and then breaking down, I'd like to see a few closes above and then continuation up on the other side. So next we're going to look at SUSHI, and my chart is probably pretty old for SUSHI, so we'll have to do a little bit of update there. SUSHI has huge swings, so it's actually a bit difficult to chart because it likes to have like 10% daily candles and that sort of thing. But yeah, this weekly has actually held up pretty well. This isn't too outdated, I guess. I would probably at this point want to move the support down for favoring recency. I would want this to catch the bottom of this area more closely. That gives us a huge support block though, so I would also probably want to bump this down around here. I know it lines up very nicely on the left, and that's always our temptation to make things as pretty as they are, but you want to favor more recent action. More recent action is always going to be more legitimate. Probably just put it atop those and consider that our support block from the 2000 to the 2380, which is still a very large block, but as I said, SUSHI is quite volatile. It likes to make huge daily candles. Just even the body on this one candle, 34%. So it's very difficult to narrow this down to a great risk reward area where you would only have like a, you know, 4% downside and 30% upside or something like that, because it's too much of a swing. I really want to play SUSHI. Like, there are a lot of setups on it that look good, but you can't really approach SUSHI on like even a 3x is pretty dangerous when you're having 30% swings. So right now we had even tops but a lower bottom, and we really are still at that bottom. So it's going to be interesting. This could be like just the final little impulse. We could just have a top here that would be pretty bad, or we could just continue bouncing around this range. So SUSHI's quite interesting because of its range right now. Even though it is quite a large range, it's kind of pulled like an old school Dogecoin where it just has like a huge up and then normalizes for a while. So I don't really know what I would want to do with this. Right now, it's, if you look at the EMA, you can see it's just kind of gone sideways. You can look at the RSI and see that it's just gone sideways. There's not a lot happening with this. And again, we are still on the weekly chart. You might be tempted to put something around this level. I don't really like it though. It just cuts through too much price action for me. Even though you are getting kind of the tops of these wicks and these bodies, I would at most call this sort of a tentative level. But for me, it's just, it needs to break one way or the other. Whether it breaks the top or the bottom doesn't really matter. I'd want to play that direction. On the daily, I suppose these purple lines are my old daily lines. And I don't know that they've played out. I don't really like this one at a glance. This one's pretty close to still being legitimate. And this one's pretty okay too. I don't like a lot of what happened through here, but if I were going to lay a line down, I would be marking tops here, wick here, and maybe I would want to drop this a bit to catch the bottom of those, but roughly it's in the right place. It's a close enough line. The top of this, probably I would want to update this for more recent price action. Not sure where it would make sense to, but perhaps something like this. If we come in a little bit closer, we can see that we would catch the top of this wick, we would catch the bottoms of these bodies and sort of the current resistance point. So if you're looking at a daily, yeah, I mean, you could make your argument for the bottoms of the wicks too. If you wanted to mark something like this, I don't know why I'm using purple, but I think what my bias generally is to include like the whole body. So normally I would want to mark something like this, but because this is so volatile and because the candles are so just like the wick is longer than the candle, it makes it very difficult to really nail down a point. So you kind of just have to take a best guess. And if I were going to play this myself, this is what I would currently be looking at. Maybe a little bit higher. Yeah, I think I like the higher point because, not that this isn't a legitimate point to mark or anything, but just looking at where the EMA is coming up, this is going to give you kind of a confluence point where you have your daily and your EMA, and to lose both of those simultaneously would be a pretty big sign that you're going to eject, and losing those simultaneously, you probably would be getting down here toward the bottom half of the RSI as well. So that's a point of control that bulls are going to want to hold. So I think that's really the area I would be watching on the daily, which is 2625 to 2800. But the bigger picture on this is really that I have no interest in playing the daily. Looking at this weekly and how since January it's basically just been this range, it's very unexciting. There are a lot of swing trade opportunities here. If you short and long at just the right point, or even if you just buy spot and you hit these huge candles, then you do really well for yourself. But that's not my game. That's not what I would advocate for anybody to do. I think you're better off looking for opportunities elsewhere. I want to look at ZRX, which I have not looked at in forever, and I have to type the correct thing for it to show up. There we are. So let's see if any of these old markings played out. Well, the resistance has never been reached again, so we don't know. This trend line definitely broke down and got retested. It almost got retested even from here, but we can get rid of that. That's very old now. So this range that I had previously marked as support it actually had some good points. I think the bottom line is much more relevant still than the top. Perhaps the top should have been closer to this, or maybe the bottom over there. Yeah, let's just get rid of that for now and get rid of this for now. We are looking at the weekly. So just looking at this from a distance, you know, you've got a very obvious downtrend, a sort of shaky uptrend, very obvious downtrend. And then if I had to say now, I would say that we've got a downtrend off of this sort of parabolic rise. So it's a little bit scary. We are very close to our all-time low. And being close to a high time frame all-time low is not where you want to be. But we can just mark the bottom of this in case. That's our all-time low. That's where we absolutely can't afford to go back to. If we're going to update this for more recent price action, easy. That's going to be our bottom. Let's get a little closer to make this easier to see. And I think if you're favoring recency, I don't really like this point. Like, I probably wouldn't want to drag this all the way back here, because it does cut through a lot, unless you're going to make this some kind of block, like so, which I have less of an issue with. Does this make sense? Can we make it prettier? There we go. So, yeah, right now I would say that you are at a resistance point. It might make more sense to look a little bit higher. But for now, this is fine. We'll mark this as kind of a tentative line. There we go. So right now we're at this resistance on a high time frame. We're in a downtrend. We're under the EMA. And we're under RSI, just barely. We have a chance to do a double bottom. What we would need for that double bottom is to break out and probably do some kind of reconfirmation and then signal a trend change. Doesn't look like that's going to happen in the short term. I have to change this song if it doesn't end soon. This is an awful. I'm just going to change. There we go. Something new. Okay. Yeah, this doesn't look great. I don't like it really. Just honestly, the macro, you could even simplify more to just be like this, more or less. So you do have some very volatile swings on this, but it doesn't line up to be anything. This is more like just some kind of a resistance block in itself up here that you would mark later on. If you happen to get a breakout, you would start looking up here for something to mark. I don't think this is probably even worth looking at on the daily, considering the struggle with weekly resistance. Perhaps you would want to trade this on the daily. If you can break through this level, you might look toward this. And if you can start to close above this sort of level, perhaps you would, yeah, probably look for something around this sort of area as your next stop, around the 3000. But for now, not the sort of thing I really enjoy trading. You do have a tentative uptrend. This is only a 2-touch, so it's not confirmed. And the daily is above the EMA, but it's kind of riding it, right? It's got some failed breakouts, a lot of failure here. So I don't know, it just doesn't look very good. I'm not saying you can't make money or it's not a good project. I really like ZeroX as a project. When it came out, it was also one of the only things doing what it does, but now DeFi is so big, there's so many options. that you don't have to be stuck with something that underperforms. Speaking of underperformance, K and C have not charted in a long time as well. They're probably some old marks. Oh, what are these? Eesh. Well, this is still leagues away. I don't know what all these marks are on the daily, I suppose. These are some kind of daily marks. Looking at some 1% range. I must have leverage played this or something at one point. I don't remember what was going on with all of these markings, but they seem very old, so just going to do the easy thing and get rid of them. Then go back to the weekly and see what we've got. Support. I think it's fair enough to draw this as a block. And we want to find our resistance. Looks to be about here. You do chop through this a little bit, but for the most part it's been respected everywhere else. So this is also, if we continue to push up, it's likely where we're going to run into the EMA. If we kind of push up and start to take things in a more bullish direction. We're also pretty close to the middle of the RSI. So that's a nice confluence of things if it wants to play out. So I would consider this like a decision point on the weekly. Something to play if it wants to break to the top side. And if it were to break to the top side, yeah, probably I mean, that's not a perfect. I don't know that I would want to go that far back just for the sake of it. But yeah, I would look at something like this on the top end. Of course, you have some higher wicks you can point out. But this would be where I would be a bit cautious about hanging on too tightly. Yes, you have candle closes up here. Yes, there are some wicks up here. You can point to all these different levels, interim levels if you want to. But for now, the first order of business is breaking 4,800. So what is its chance of doing that? Pretty solid, probably. I don't know that I would want to speculate. But you are so far maintaining a trend. It's not exactly a 3-touch. It's not like legitimized textbook uptrend or anything like that. And of course, your local trend is down for the time being. So it is something to be cautious about. I don't know that I would really want to be in on a decision point. I don't like to trade decision points, so probably would wait for it to take that level, move above the EMA, move above the RSI, and then I would be interested more to trade however high it wants to go. I'll probably take some off here, take some off there, and then whatever's left over, just let it run as far as it wants to run. Next, Uni. I charted Uni recently, so this probably won't take very long. Unless I did it in USD. I think I did in USD actually. So I might have... Oh my goodness. This is exactly the same. Yeah. Okay, boom, we're done. Didn't have to do anything. Great. There's Uni. Has achieved absolutely nothing in the meantime. We can just throw down a resistance brick if we really want to. And that's all we have to do for Uni. Why does this look so strange? It's because for some reason the candles are behind everything. There we go. This is again one of those things where you could put tentative levels, like something around there if you really wanted to. You can mark these tentative levels in between the big weeklies and try to trade those and say, well, we've got the EMA on our side right now and RSI and all that, but not too interested in trading things that are in the middle of big ranges like this. We can look a little bit closer on the daily, and none of that stuff shows up. We've got it all turned off on the daily. So if we look at our daily, what have we got? Let's see, we have this nice level right here that has flipped into resistance, and we've got this nice level right here that's acting as support. Pretty clean, really. Kind of surprised by that. You could extend this out if you wanted to and start marking some other things, but I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's even particularly legitimate. So what I would be looking for right now is what's our downside. Our downside's 2%, our upside's 4%. Not bad. I mean, if you go to the upside, you're probably going to continue at this point, right? With the market being the way it is. So a 2% downside, not a bad gamble. You don't like to see this sort of thing where you have a huge dump. Not much fighting back from the bulls. The fighting back retests resistance basically perfectly, and then you continue downward. That's not really what you want to see, but if you are going to take a gamble on something like this, you could choose a lot worse places to do it. Below, you would look for something around here, around the top of this and the bottom of this sort of formation. You could extend this out if you really wanted, something like that, and you can extend even further, and you can sort of catch this. If you want to go really ham, it actually lines up with this wick and sort of the candle bottoms over here, and even further you get the bottoms of this, even further you get sort of the top of this range. So this seems to be a pretty important level. It does have a lot of chop through it, but it checks out for recency. I mean, if that bothers you, I would just put this right here so it looks nice and pretty and you don't have to worry about anything else. But that would be a support block. I wouldn't hold through the support block. I would just get out here. I would take that 2% risk and call it a day. Your macro is perhaps changing. You had this macro downtrend here, and it seems that we might be reversing that. Could be making a macro uptrend now. So if that's the case, what we would be seeing is the retest of a sort of double bottom formation, which is not perfect. Normally, if you have a double bottom, you want like a real W, something like that. Not this shallow, like lowercase w, but I mean, you can make the argument that this is a kind of double bottom. I wouldn't call it a double bottom, but plenty of people out there are going to. So if you want to consider it that way, what you want to see here is a retest of sort of this neck level, which, you know, anywhere in here is fine. You're close enough, but you definitely want to peel up from here. You're about the middle of the RSI and you're already under the EMA, so you want to see that taken back. You don't want to lose this level and head back to this range. Historically, this has been where all the bottoms happen. So if you do come back to this range, then I guess you should probably buy it. That seems to be the risk-reward zone down here for sure. But that's the daily. What is that? 57k to 55k, give or take, and then around 61k for resistance. And weekly was, yeah, just all this stuff is happening in the middle. I don't really like that. I mean, you're kind of just doing a little triangle boy sideways, and I don't like to trade those. You've been just in this range more or less since January. So 8 months later, no real progress, not something I want to trade. I want to trade something that looks like this part of uni, not something that looks like this part. Next, we're going to look at Luna because it's been popping off. It gets shilled a lot, and I haven't checked it in a long time. Not since the crash, I think. So, oh my god. Holy shit, guys, what are you doing? You get... So you had a parabola, the big China crash, and then another parabola. So I need somebody to explain to me why this? Yeah, why this? That's what I really need. Yeah, so I think there was some point where I traded Luna, and I don't remember where it was. I know I got in and out really fast into some, like, around this point. I don't think I traded any afterward. I can't remember, but I've been pretty hands-off with Luna. It's just been, like, I didn't want to buy a parabola, and I was focusing on other things during this crash. I was mostly looking at different coins, so I haven't charted this in a while, but this is definitely still a legitimate high time frame support. There's no high time frame resistance yet. You're in price exploration mode, so we can look at the dailies for some kind of speculative level, and I think you definitely got your support somewhere around there. That'll be a daily support. And as far as daily resistance goes, I mean, you can't really count to the point we are right now because it's only 8 hours into the daily. So this level might be nothing by the end of the day. But if this ends up forming some kind of candle, oh, it's freaking out because I have magnet on. If this ends up forming some kind of candle that's like, you know, a fat boy with a wick that gets rejected off of this, then I would go ahead and call this daily resistance. If we end up closing up here or something, then probably not. Probably gonna look closer to the top of this wick for a daily resistance level, or even you might get something like this that becomes support. But for right now, red into a doji into green, obvious support level being formed here. So 57.4 as support, and resistance, we don't know yet. We'll have to find out. But yeah, Luna from the weekly looks absolutely insane, but if you look at it from the daily, of course it is parabolic, but the corrections that it has, they cut pretty deep. So that's nice. It allows you to come up and get your little sprint again, and then kind of have a deep correction. And you know, this is basically ranging sideways for a little bit, you deep correction, a little bit of a range sideways. So that's a good way to create a platform where you can continue going up. So now you have a correction, and if it holds true to its pattern here, maybe we will see a little bit of sideways, or you know, even if it's up here a little bit, wherever it ends up being, and then another leg up would be the pattern that it's been doing. I wouldn't expect that it can do that forever, but you know, constantly in crypto we get surprised by things doing stuff technically that they really shouldn't do, that you don't really see happening outside of, say, OTC markets or something in traditional finance. The big concern here is, at this point, you got overbought and you had that big correction. Here we're very overbought and had quite a minor correction directly back into overbought. So this is something that is either going to try to cool down a lot or cool down for a while, or it's just going to ramp up and start spending all its time up here like so, and it just won't matter. So place your bets, I suppose. I wouldn't want to do it at what appears to be a point for daily resistance necessarily, but if you were to start scaling into spot here, that would make a lot of sense. If you're a leverage player, probably wouldn't want to enter a long right here. But who knows? You know, all you can do is speculate when it's in price exploration, and it's been in price exploration since it took off from this weekly level. That was, you know, 35% of its price action ago. But what a great level. That really played out so well, and it's a great foundation. I really doubt that we would come all the way down and revisit that, would be pretty catastrophic. You would definitely have lost the EMA at that point and be way down on RSI. So I don't really see that happening in a bull market unless Luna were to get hacked or something. That's probably not going to happen. But seeing these pushes down into like a little consolidation here, having a push down off of the overbought, I think a little consolidation would be nice, would be a good sort of pattern to see playing out. I don't trade fractals or patterns or anything like that, but stabilizing, letting the EMA kind of catch up is always a good thing to me for future stability, so it can continue upward instead of needing some kind of massive correction in order to kind of return to its normal price action. Because if you are a return to mean trader, you don't want to see bigger and bigger swings away from that average price. You want to see these little swings like that and just kind of ride that line up. Once you start getting away from it, your correction into it tends to be stronger. So keeping those swings kind of minimal would be preferable to getting some kind of big parabolic advance. Unless, you know, if you bought way down here, of course you don't care. But I like to see crypto grow and be healthy and maintain that upward climb. I don't like it to go parabolic because it flushes out a lot of people. It gives a lot of credit to the criticisms that crypto's too volatile, crypto's too risky, whatever. So if you can get slower advances, because this is just big parabola, sharp drop, big parabola, you don't want to come into another sharp drop. So if we can get a climb that looks like this, that's much better than a climb that just does this. It's more attractive as an investor to buy something that I can forget about, and for normal people to come in, that's what they want as well. So hopefully this can kind of find a price that it's comfortable with. And you know, this parabola is very scary, so I don't want to see that end up breaking down all the way to the weekly or something. But if it does, you sure as fuck want to buy. It's too good of a level. If for whatever reason we got back there, you would have to be crazy not to want to buy that level. Next, let's take a look at Link. I know my Link chart is up to date, so this shouldn't be too much time. Link is very clean on the weekly, as always. Wait, did I just said it was up to date and I clicked the wrong one. This is USDT chart, which is why nothing is there. Okay, let's look at the correct thing this time. Got into a bad habit there. Okay, so going to the weekly, Link is always very clean. These are a bunch of daily levels, so ignore the things that aren't purple for now. Ignore all of that stuff happening there. But of course, tops and bottoms, the weekly support has held once again. You got a nice wick into it there as well, and peeled off. So what you want to see coming off of this is the ability to actually break out from this level, if we can get there. That's a long way off. So from here, you know, 30%, 35% up, just to attempt to break that. By the time you get there, you should be in so much profit that you don't care if it breaks or not. But looking at the weekly levels, I think we can hijack this daily and kind of update for more recent weekly resistance. There's probably something to this level. Having the bottoms of these wicks, very close wick here, some very close wicking going on over here. And yeah, this green being a daily level doesn't really matter too much. We've already got a weekly level right there, but we can zoom in a little bit closer and see why that green is there. And where did it come from? It came from the bottom of this, but looking at recent price action, I don't think that's any longer valid. I think looking at recent price action, probably something... how do I feel about this? Yeah, maybe something around here would make more sense. Of course, you're getting the top of this. There are wicks above. Wicks going above this level. Some candle bodies close on this side. But we've already got a weekly level mark here, so that accounts for those. But what I'm really looking at is this side of it, where we're getting all these wicks coming down, using this as a daily support. I think this red on the daily for resistance is just fine. That's played out well. I don't think we really need to adjust that, but I don't like this one. I think I would probably move that up toward the top of this wick, candle bodies. And then, of course, these wicks are just reaching to the weekly resistance, so we don't need to mark a daily there. So, if you're playing this on the daily, what you're really looking at right now is sort of this. This is your sort of daily range you should be watching. You want to see the 56.7 on the bottom side hold, which is the weekly, and would mean that we also continue our EMA and our RSI to hold. Or on the top side, you want to see this 58,400-ish break so that we can continue to advance and make a stab at this daily resistance around 6,900. 60,900, not 6,900. So yeah, this just ranging right now looks like it wants to make a decision. Judging by the wicks, you have a pretty equal distribution of bullish and bearish sentiment, kind of ping-ponging a little bit, so we'll have to see who wins there. Right now it's pretty even. The volume's dropping off. That usually means that a big decision is going to be incoming. When you see price stagnating but volumes dropping, typically you'll get to some kind of very low volume. Right now we're only 8 hours into the day, so probably the volume will end up closing out around here or something. But if over the next few days you see volume closing lower and lower, you're probably going to see some kind of big impulse going one direction or the other. It could be a big sell-off toward the bottom of this. It could be a big buy toward the top of that. But in range, with volume tapering off like that, going sideways, not something you necessarily want to play. It's always safer to watch for a direction. Make that a little bit cuter and we can line up. There we are. So that's links daily. Just kind of, what would my bias be? I think if I had to take a bias here, man, it's really rough because the local is like straight sideways. Your reversion to mean right now is just this, which kind of checks out with the idea of diminishing volume into some kind of impulse. So there's really no bias at all right now, but if you want to backtrack a little bit, you might consider this big run up here to be something of an anomaly, and you might consider that your average price action is really mostly happening around these levels. And as long as this were to swing up, that would be okay, but yeah, I don't really like that either. I think it's really just going sideways. I wouldn't want to play this either way. This is something I'll definitely just wait. What else do I have energy for? We'll just do a few more. I want to look at AVAX, Avalanche, Crypto Cap. No, I want a real exchange. So I'll look at the Binance chart. I don't think I've ever charted this before, and holy shit. So this is very interesting. What a strange chart. Just immediately, what a strange... This kind of looks like... What am I thinking of? Did it look like... Look a little bit like SUSHI, but I might be thinking of... Yeah, I don't know what I'm thinking of. Maybe, it looks like, XTZ or something, like very early on, before it started dropping really bad. But yeah, definitely clear level here. It's going to be pretty easy to chart, most likely. I say that, and then it's going to be like something really messes with me, but Probably should be consistent with my colors. And there we are. Bottom. Easy, easy, easy. We could probably mark something, you know, around this level as sort of a tentative support. If you were to come back into this level just sort of as a fake out, I would consider that to be like a good place to bounce to continue some sort of uptrend anyway. And it's catching close enough to the tops of these. I mean, you cut through a little bit with these candle bodies, and this candle cuts through a little bit too, but that's okay because of course supports are just kind of zones. They're not straight lines. They are just areas of support that we denote with lines, so don't get too upset about those. We don't really need to mark anything down here. I started to just because it looks very clean, but you know, it would be like marking this. We don't really need to. If we get anywhere beneath this level, then no one's going to be wanting to trade this down to $4 anyway. It's going to be a dead project. So that's really all we can mark on the weekly. You could look for perhaps last week's wick just as a gentle guideline, but this week has already wicked above that, so I don't think that's necessarily anything worth watching. You could look back a bit and see kind of where these are coming in, and perhaps you would get a higher support level around here, around the 43.89, which is just a previous wick and happens to cut through where these were, but I don't think that's really anything that has confirmation yet. I don't mind to leave it as like a little dotted boy to watch for the future, but as far as what's confirmed, it's just these big thick lines here, this big range that we spent a lot of time in. And people gotta be really upset right now. You know, a lot of people were just like buying and buying, and then it broke down and they sold everything, and then boom, here we are. And just like because of this one huge week, so many people, that happens to them, and then they'll FOMO in and see a little bit of retracing and get out and lose money, and then it just skyrockets and they FOMO back in and they go in this cycle. So don't want that to happen to us. We want to know, oh, actually look at that level. That's pretty good on the daily. That one we marked just because of that wick, it's actually playing out pretty well. You have the top, you have a nice doji, you've got the bottom of that one, and a good little wick coming in. So maybe that's better than I thought. Don't mind that as much. I wouldn't mind to mark it like as a daily. I think it's okay to mark as a daily. As far as daily resistance goes, I don't think we can really mark anything. You really don't want to put a line down like here because the daily candle is not anywhere close to done and we've already wicked above it. You could probably tentatively mark something like this. You do have candle tops and a wick top here, and then you've got the wick top of yesterday coming up and reaching toward this. So on the daily, this is probably what we're looking at, around 43.67 on the bottom end and 54.68 on the top end, which is quite a big spread. I have to change this song because it's got the sound of someone walking around and crunching leaves, and it's driving me fucking insane. So we're going to change that. Okay. Losing my mind. Sorry, I'm trying to focus and not let things bother me, but here we are. So, I mean, this seems like a bad spot, right? Your upside to resistance, 9.5%. Your downside to support, 12%. Almost 13. So it's not like a great risk reward area. The only reason you would be buying here is just because you believe in the project long term, which it seems a lot of people do. And you know, I can see why. It survived this. So, you know, coming back off of that to break the range that you were stuck in is like pretty crazy. But to long something when your nearest support is 12% down seems really scary to me. So if I were to go into this, I would probably just want to go in on spot. I mean, your EMA is 1,000 years away and you're overbought right now. So you know, coming off of like crazy volume 2 seems very like some kind of whale came in and just like market bought a lot of stuff. Maybe I don't know what really happened. I don't follow the fundamentals, but watching the daily, you know, either buy the break of all-time high, which is going to be huge hype, or just kind of average in and maybe use the weekly as your ultimate ejection point. Buy a little bit on the daily, a little bit on the daily, and if you happen to retrace, then that's fine. Just don't hang on to it too much through there, because this is all empty space on one daily candle down to even a tentative support point. But overall, I don't necessarily like having just a huge consolidation into a breakdown into like a ridiculous parabola. It's not something that I really like to see, but judging by the volume, there's clearly renewed interest in this project, especially considering that volume started right here. So that interest came into this project after it was still had broken down from this range and was still outside of the range, and actually retesting it as a resistance. So technically speaking, you shouldn't have been buying there, but whoever did has made out very well for themselves, and it doesn't look like it's, you know, you're seeing a little bit of curvature coming in where it might be changing direction, but I don't know, man. If you want to speculate, it's not a bad speculation, but if you're looking to leverage, it's not a great place to be leveraging. I would just wait for an all-time high or some kind of retracement. I mean, look how far this can retrace and still be bullish. I mean, it could come all the way down to here and just kind of ping pong, and it would be such a ridiculous high low. Like, if you want to be really technical, you could come down like all the way to the neckline here, something around this area. You could retrace all the way down to there because there's been no bottom yet. So that's not going to happen. That's not how things tend to play out, but just the fact that you could is pretty scary. Most likely you just would see the top of this old resistance act as a support if you revisit anything. And if you get the luxury of coming back to that level, it's something that you should definitely take a shot at. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But for now, the daily is probably your best bet. I don't know that we're just going to blast through this, but if we do, I'll play the other side of that. A couple more, and I'm going to call it a day. I wanted to look at INJ, which I've never charted before, so it's going to take a couple minutes to do this. And take a peek at the weekly. This is a very ugly chart. I immediately regret opening it. I don't want to chart this anymore because it's it looks terrible and disgusting and volatile, and it's the thing that I enjoy charting the least. But we can throw down a few levels here pretty quickly. Probably something around there. And so yeah, this is more or less what we'd be working with. Probably something around here. Yeah. This extends well, but not like well enough. Yeah, I don't know about this. Probably just leave that alone. So, of course, you had the crash, the big crypto crash, and it looks like it's basically just followed Bitcoin and Ethereum through this downturn. Like, this chart looks very Bitcoin-esque, so I'm immediately not very interested in it. But just for the sake of finishing what we've started, here's your resistance block, and you are currently testing and rejecting from resistance after having wicked all the way up to here. It's quite volatile, but you can see the volume has never really come back in. You don't really see like renewed interest coming back into this project like you did with AVAX, where there's suddenly like some big boom of volume. So unless that happens and, you know, it just shoots way up on high volume, probably I'm not too interested in something that's doing this, it's just like, it's too much, man. Just seeing, I'm tired of these sorts of patterns. So if you're not familiar with these sort of just like brick patterns, people used to call them bots. I don't know what they call them anymore, because you like the Bart Simpson head, where you just like go up and then come straight back down, and you just have these jagged wicks on the top. They tend to be continuation patterns. So if you're going down and you have like a big one of these, it's usually not going to be a reversal. It's usually just going to be something that continues down, or both directions, whatever direction it is, tends to continue in whatever direction it's going. And it's a strange liquidity hunt sort of thing. So to see these usually means that it's a bit manipulated, and I therefore try to stay away from things that have a lot of these sorts of patterns. Let me go ahead and ban this bot real quick. Okay. And so to see that this is trending down, and yes, it does have this sort of pattern within that trend, but then it of course just continues down. I don't really like to see that. It's possible you can be seeing a reversal here off of this bottom, you know, some sort of bottom coming in like this, to mimic Bitcoin, of course. But in that case, you might as well wait for this high time frame resistance to flip, because right now it's being rejected, and it was rejected here, and also this block has held through all of these wicks, really, not just this one, but all of these. So this has been tested so many times, and it's being tested again. So you might as well, if you wanted to be part of this, just wait for it to get a body close above. Anywhere really is fine. Any body close above in this level would be fine, to then consider that a trend reversal and start looking for a continuation on the other side. But as it stands right now, I don't really like that it's just forever stuck at this block, even with this big wick up to another resistance. Just wicking up from one resistance and then closing below another is ugly. It's not like a very stable thing. It's too volatile for me personally. I wouldn't want to trade it. So these are what the weeklies look like on the daily. On the daily, you can see a clear uptrend locally after finishing off this little downtrend. So not quite a double bottom, but pretty close. So if you wanted to have some kind of yeah, it's just not a double bottom. It's not like this is not good enough. This is just one of those box patterns. It's basically just a V reversal, which is fine. So this being the previous support, we just want to see that hold and then continue on in the direction that it's already going. So that's what you're going to want if you're a bull. For me, that would just mean probably waiting this out on a higher time frame. One more, we're going to look at SRM. Bitcoin. And on the weekly, I don't think I've ever charted this. This also looks pretty volatile, but you can mark a pretty a pretty clear level. You might want to favor recency and drop that down, but I think this is good enough. Is there anything big and special? Probably look toward this as a resistance. I don't like to go back this far, but you do have some bottoms, breaks through, some tops. Obviously a top here, breaks through, and a bottom. And now testing it as a resistance again. So you're so close to this resistance that you might as well just wait for it to flip to support. There's no reason that you would want to open a long right under resistance. And if you go to the top side, this used to be a very nice resistance level. It looks like it still is close enough. So if I can get that lined up, of course you have a wick here, a bottom, wick, close enough on these bodies, and then this wick exactly to this level. So it seems like the either trading bots or technical traders are really watching this. There might be some sort of resistance level like around here to be wary of. So you have the tops and the bottoms, but for the most part you're chopping through this and wicking through this, so I don't know that I would necessarily consider this like a very strong level. So I'd probably demote that, and of course this should also be red. So at this point I would say that on this, any return to this sort of range, which is like my fine motor skills are not the best these days, but you can see you were mostly doing price action here, and then you're mostly doing price action down here. So this sort of level around 11k is also a support, but it's not an important one, because if you lose this around 13,500, then you probably just want to be out, because it's been such a strong resistance that to flip that we would expect it to be a very strong support. So if we go down again, maybe to meet the EMA or something like that, would expect 13.5 to hold. And of course that would be the point where you would want to buy and expect more upside. If you got more downside from there, I would just get out. If this continues upward, then just taking this is fine for me. I would say that if we are in a legitimate bull market, probably you are going to see some kind of new all-time high from this. This is a weak resistance, and this resistance was respected by this wick, but it wasn't really respected that much over here. I mean, you almost have like this sort of level being more legitimate. So I don't really think this resistance is going to be much of anything either. I think the resistance we are currently facing is more important than both of these. So if you can flip this resistance, I would be pretty comfortable just, you know, fluctuation aside, whatever it wants to do, I'd be pretty comfortable holding a little bit of this for a longer period of time and looking for some highs off of that. It doesn't look like the best play in the world right now. It really, you know, other things were very much fighting in this range, and it looks like this just kind of gave up. So I don't know how strong of a following this has or anything, but it's definitely pumping now off the bottom, and if it wants to continue upward, then you might as well be along for the ride. So you could find better, but I think you could definitely find a lot worse too. I'd like to see this kind of continue. So you have the price action really shooting up and coming off of this like low volume period. You're seeing higher volume like by a lot. And right now it's only Tuesday, and we've already got as much volume as like half of the week here on this like shitty doji spot. So if we can keep posting, you know, pretty decent volume, even if it's you know, selling volume, I think that would show interest in the project. And even if it's like red, even if, you know, you're getting like this much volume but it's setting off a bit, probably just shows that there's interest in the project and that people are focusing more on it, which if we are in a bull run, then that's going to be probably good news for it. So not too scary, but definitely when you are at a resistance like this, I don't know why I returned it to green, but when you're at a resistance like this, I mean, it's very obvious. You don't need to break out the percentage calculator or anything and see that your downside is much bigger than your upside, so might as well wait for it to either flip or retrace. But that's SRM. So today we covered AXS, AAVE, Sol.Sushi, ZRX, KNC, Uni, Luna, Link, AVAX, INJ, and SRM. And I'm tired. I'll post up some of these charts, maybe all of them, maybe not. I don't know if I have the energy today to type all the descriptions out and all that, so I might just, we looked at mostly weeklies anyway, so I might just revisit these to the next couple days and put them online. But if you happen to catch this in video format, thank you for taking the time. Thank you if you follow or subscribe or like or leave a comment or whatever it is that lets me know you came by. And I appreciate that. I'm not looking for like billions of followers or something. This is just more of a way for me to keep practicing and for you to see my thoughts process and understand that it's not that complicated. Nothing I'm doing here is anything that is like superpowers. It's not like big intelligence or anything like that. This is something any normal person can do. It's just something that you have to do exactly what I did today, where you just pull up a bunch of charts and practice and see what sticks and what makes sense, and then you revisit them later and see if it still makes sense, if it played out like you thought it would or not, or if you need to update something. And you know, it's not difficult. Anybody can do this. If you are a beginner, or if you're not even beginning yet because you think maybe you can't do it, just want to say that you're wrong. You absolutely can. And if you are a veteran and you think you're great at it, then that's good, but don't forget that you still have to practice, and there's always room to improve and new tricks to learn. And try and look at other people's methods. I'm very much in my way. As you can tell, I like my horizontals, I like my RSI, I like EMAs. I'm not an Elliott wave trader, I'm not like a diamond pattern trader. I don't like those things, generally speaking. So I do follow people who do that just so I can see different ways of thinking about things. And sometimes we come to the same conclusions for completely different reasons, and sometimes our conclusions are entirely different. Just because we're different traders. And in that case, it's interesting to keep an eye on it and watch and see who comes out right. In my opinion, horizontals tend to come out right. It's easy points for trading bots and algorithms and novices to see. Much easier to understand than like some 5-point Elliott wave theory or something like that. So I think horizontals are the best thing to start out with, and they're the best thing to end with, but that's just me. If something else works better for you, then do it. And show me, because I want to see how you think too. That's going to be all for me today. Thank you again for your time, for the privilege of entertaining you and having your support. I hope that whatever you do is profitable and you make a lot of money and have a great time doing it. Feel free to send me a message or request. In the meantime, this is Nika signing out. Goodbye, have a great day or night.